How do you start teaching yoga online? What do you need? What how is it different from in person? What kind of subscriptions do you need? What do you need to look out for? And we're going to try to talk about all, if not, or most, if not all of this in today's episode. Welcome back to Rebel Movement Podcast. My name is Billy. My pronouns are they, them, or she, her. I'm glad you're here. I have been teaching yoga since 2016, 9 years now, almost, which is wild. And I started pre-pandemic, of course. I was teaching in a studio. And then, as the story goes with most of us, or not most of us, a lot of us, COVID happened. Both my jobs shut down forever. And I was like, what do I do now? I basically started teaching online out of necessity because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to stop teaching. And I also didn't have anything else to, I didn't have any other jobs. And where I live in Canada, Ontario, Canada, we had government support, but I feel like I got an email every other month saying, "Oh, your support's going to stop soon," but the shutdown was still happening. And anyway, I started my business out of necessity, but it's since then grown to a whole other thing. I started out of necessity, and now it's something that I genuinely love, and I'm kind of crafted this space that's a little bit more specific in its offerings. If you haven't worked with me before, haven't heard of me before, well, as you know from this intro, I teach yoga online. I also teach mobility. I teach workout classes, all online. I take one-on-one clients, and I also teach in person a little bit again. But I specifically am teaching an anti-diet yoga class. So that means it has nothing to do with diet culture. And a lot of the people that come to work with me have spent years and years trying to figure out how to repair their relationship with movement and their body after hating their body or moving because of hate for their body or punishment. And they're looking for a space that's genuinely a anti-diet space, genuinely fat positive space. If you want to know more about that and creating that, I will post that in another episode. But so for today's episode, all you need to know is that's sort of my approach. I'm queer, I'm non-binary, and I also am trauma-informed teacher. So I bring that into everything I do. I take one-on-one clients, and and I do in person. So the actual equipment you will need is pretty minimal. When I first started doing these classes, I used my phone. I didn't use I actually still use my phone. I don't use any sort of fancy camera. You could if you have one, but it's a really high expense. It doesn't necessarily make a huge difference at first. As long as your phone camera is good. You can also use a webcam. Most have 1080p webcams. Like most webcams have 1080p, which is pretty good quality. I don't know that you can really get anything better at the moment. Like you might be able to do HD 1080p, but some people's devices don't have that anyway. And okay, so recapping, sorry. You can start off with your phone. I would say it's easiest if you have some sort of headphones or earbuds. I would test them out ahead of time within some sort of video class, like with a friend of yours or with your partner or something, and just check in that they can hear you, that the quality of the audio is okay. And I would try moving around with them as well, just to make sure that they're not going to fall out of your ears or that there's not a lot of extra rustling. I think I've heard people who've used AirPods that have been fine. I've used a couple of different types of headphones. I think mine are Sony right now, but I think I can't even remember. Maybe the previous ones were Sony. I can tell you what I've used. I can put them in the show notes if I can find it, or you can send me a message. And I would say you could use the tripod as well in your yoga mat. So a tripod, some sort of headphones, earbuds, phone, and a mat. I say tripod. You could probably get away without it. When I first started teaching, obviously this was before I ever taught online, and it wasn't really as much of a thing. I basically just propped my phone up and hoped for the best. Most of the time it was fine. But anytime you have to hit a button on the screen, you're kind of risking it falling over, which is not the most relaxing for your class. So if you can get a tripod, you could even find them at the dollar store. Um, and then get creative with how you lift it up if you need it to be lifted up a little bit more. So when you're first starting off, basics is completely fine. Since the beginning, I have invested in good mic, which I'm also using for this recording. It's a Rode Wireless ME, and I use it with the I actually still use it with my phone. There's a little bit of a confusing setup I found. If you do end up buying it and you need help with it, let me know, or I can maybe do a little video about it. I had a little bit of trouble connecting it with my phone originally because I have a Samsung phone, and I don't know if it was Samsung or Zoom, but something was weird about it. If you are using this mic with your phone, you can't hear other people. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. It works also with computers. You just have to go into the settings that you have your your audio in. I'm getting myself confused. Audio in would be through some sort of earbuds or something. Audio out would be through your mic. It's a little bit technical, but hopefully you get that. Another thing I didn't actually invest in it. I didn't actually buy it. Someone was getting rid of it. I have a ring light as well. Good lighting is something that can be really helpful. We're in the middle of renovating the space that I'm going to be teaching in, and we've actually designed it with lights specifically for recording, which I think will be really helpful. Having light from more than one source. So if you just have the one light directly in front of you, you're going to have a lot more shadows behind you, which is more of an issue if you're teaching sort of when it's a little bit darker. If you have light from more than one source, it'll reduce the amount of shadows, which will just it'll make it sort of the quality of the video a little bit better. So if you can get a ring light, you can find those at the dollar store too, I think. Or maybe you also have a friend that's getting rid of one. So I'll say those again, just in case you're writing notes as you're listening. Bare bones things you need: a yoga mat, your phone, earbuds or headphones, maybe a tripod. If you want to upgrade, I would get a tripod that you can lift, that it can extend a little bit higher, so you don't have to do some sort of fancy setup with books and tables and stuff. You could also get a ring light. You might get a fancy mic. And if you wanted to go even further, you might get a fancy camera. I don't really use mine right now. I have a webcam that is a good quality one. I mainly still use my phone because it's much easier for my current renovation setup. In terms of things that you need, so that's all the physical things you need, but how do you actually, where do you host a class? How do people sign up? How do you set all that up? So I use Zoom, and you can record the classes within that. Again, I'll talk about recording in a little bit. I use Zoom, so I pay for a monthly Zoom subscription, and that's where I host all of my classes. You can either just use Zoom and have a sign up somewhere where people just email you. I used to do it this way, where I have a literal handwritten list of people who wanted to take a class, and I would send them all the Zoom link. I'd email them all the Zoom link. Just make sure you're not CCing, that you're BCCing people, so people can't see other people's emails. Just a little bit more respectful of people's privacy. And that's it. You can set it up in Zoom, send it out that way. If you wanted to do bare basic stuff, that completely works fine. I currently use Offering Tree, which is it hosts my website. Offering Tree hosts my website. I can do my email marketing through them. They also have an on-demand library option. You can sign up for my classes. It integrates with Zoom, so it just sends and makes links automatically. And I can, I basically do most of my stuff in Offering Tree now, and I really honestly, personally, really love it. I love that everything is in one spot, and every time I've had to ask for support, everyone has been really helpful, and, they all are also adding in things all the time and upgrading stuff all the time. I personally really like it. Sorry. Especially if you're wanting to have on-demand classes, so classes that are like a library of classes that people can pay a subscription for. If you are interested in looking at Offering Tree, I do have an affiliate link. It should be in the show notes, where if you use that link, you get a discount on either the monthly or the yearly membership, and I get a little bit of money from it. I'm not talking up Offering Tree because I get paid if you use my link. I just genuinely really like it. It's just so nice to have everything in one spot. Anyone who's a solo entrepreneur knows we can have like a million different subscriptions, a million different websites, and as much as there's some really great tools out there, it's so nice to just have email marketing, website, um, all set up in one spot, have all of your classes there, all of your signups. You can take one-on-ones. You can have, people can send you emails. It's really nice. So check out the link in the show notes if you want a discount for that. Um, Beyond that, there's not a ton you need necessarily if you are wanting to, um, I don't know, do any editing like with this podcast. I use Audacity, which is a free um, audio editing software, but you don't necessarily need that for any of the videos. If you're wanting to edit videos, that's a whole other thing, and I haven't so far had to that in the sense of like putting it on YouTube type thing. So I do not have recommendations for software for that yet. Software? Yeah, software is the right word. Okay, so we've covered what you physically need. We've covered some of the stuff you might need on your computer, like to actually set up the classes in that sense. Let's talk about recording for a second. Some people don't record their classes at all. Like they just have the live time, and that's fine. That really works for some people. I do record my classes so that I can send out the replay. I do this for a couple of reasons. The first one is that it's more inclusive of people in different time zones. So I have someone who is in like another part of the world where, say, class is 7 a.m. for me, it's like middle of the night for them. And it's much easier for them to be able to make it with the replay of the class or the recording of the class than it is for them to make it the live time. So it kind of opens up your audience and where people can join you from. Another thing is that we all know life is really chaotic. We might have the 7 a.m. time free, and then the night before, we find out we have to like go run our kids to a field trip and we are going to miss class, but we still really want to take it. Just gives a little bit of flexibility and feels a little bit more, I don't know if I like, to me, it feels more financially accessible. Like if I'm signing up for something, as if I know that I'm not going to, if I'm not going to miss out, then I'm going to feel more confident in doing it. My current setup for my monthly membership, which is for all of the live movement classes, live online movement classes, is you can take the live class, and if you don't make it in person, if you've signed up for it, I will automatically send you the recording. And the recording or the replay is available for 7 days. And I find, just in my own experiences within my own business, it's a little bit of a motivating factor um, for your students to use the recording or use the replay. And also, we don't necessarily have an unlimited supply of storage space on Zoom. You know what I mean? You probably won't run into an issue, but if you're trying to hold all, 60 of your classes, you're gonna run out of space. um, in terms of replays or not replays, if you're wanting to have an on-demand library, then you might use the recording from Zoom and upload it if you're using Offering Tree or YouTube, whatever. I have done that a couple of times as well. So other thing about recording is that if you're using Zoom, there's a couple other things you could use, but currently I'm using Zoom. There is options to change what it's recording. I have found, my approach is to only record my own screen because of privacy issues. I also don't send the recording to other people, like people. Like I don't use it publicly if someone does end up in the recording. You know what I mean? I have it set up that if you don't turn your mic on, you're not on the recording. So it's just me that's sort of the main person, and I'm the only screen recorded. I do let people know because it can be a little bit unnerving or scary at first if you don't know how it works. I do hold space before and after class for questions, and I do check in with the chat to see if any questions happen there. But I haven't really had that many issues. There's been a couple of times where people ask questions and they turn on their mic, which again, if you're using the Rode wireless mic with your phone, you can't hear people. Um, but if, say, you're using headphones and someone turned their mic on and asked a question, I don't use that for like my website or YouTube or anything. I only send it to the people who sign up. But I make sure ahead of time that people are fully aware of how that works. And I make sure there is space for questions because I think it is important to have. With me? Um, in terms of how to actually teach, like the differences between in person and online, um, I would say the main difference from a teacher perspective is how you are teaching to the bodies. If you're teaching in person, you know that you are, there's a big focus on looking at the bodies that you're actually teaching and teaching to those bodies and putting cues if someone's like to bring awareness to muscles in your legs for a powerful pose, for example. Teaching online is a wonderful way of helping people learn to tune into their own bodies. One of the reasons I love it is because you have that opportunity in such a unique way. People tend to feel a little bit safer in their spaces. You might be teaching a class and most people have their cameras off the whole time and you might never see their face. And that's like completely fine. What you can do then as a teacher is invite them to listen to their own bodies and learn what those physical cues feel like. For example, if we're talking about powerful pose, you might ask them to notice, how does your low back feel here? What happens if you move your knees more forwards or more back? What's the difference? And you might do this in person too, for sure. Online is just a really interesting way of connecting in that sense, that you're teaching the cues to their bodies, but for them to notice them. You might also, if you know the person, you might not necessarily call it out specifically, but if you notice that, or if you know that someone tends to, say, overtuck their tailbone in powerful pose, you might keep that in mind when you're cueing and say, notice what happens if you let your spine be neutral. And like maybe use your hand on your back and notice, like, am I really rounding my spine? Can I find a bit of a neutral spot? It's just a really wonderful learning environment. And if you have that space before or after class where you can, ask like, oh, how was that experience in powerful pose for you? Like, what did you notice? And maybe they say, I have no idea. And maybe they don't want to share, and that's completely fine. But then maybe you get to have this conversation about, oh, I did notice I was tucking my tailbone, and it's interesting because it also happened here. It's just, you still have the same way you can teach two bodies. It just looks a little bit different online. Personally, absolutely love it. I also have decided to add extra, add in, how do I say this? I factored in some of the community time into my classes. So I leave some time at the beginning. It's not like you're not obligated to share. You can keep your camera and mic off the whole time, but there is a space to say hi, to share wins, to talk about like the food you ate that you loved or whatever. So we're getting some of that community vibe that we would get in in-person classes. So to me, doesn't feel like you're missing out on anything. Personally love them. So we've covered what you physically need, what you need from a software / website, whatever standpoint. I've talked about recordings. If you have any questions, if anything I didn't cover, anything that are more specific bits of this, please let me know. You can send them in to info@movewithbilly.com. I do also do some work one-on-one if you have more questions about your specific issues starting your online business with yoga or teaching online or teaching in a more inclusive way, an anti-diet way. I also take one-on-one appointments for you and I can help you out as much as I can. So you can send an inquiry to info@movewithbilly.com and grab a free 30-minute consult where we can just make sure that we work well together. This stuff, like teaching online, starting your own business, all that stuff is really hard. And one of my most helpful resources that I found in my startup is community and finding other people who get it and who've been there and who aren't just going to try to sell you their top tips for becoming successful on Instagram. They're going to talk about like imposter syndrome and they're going to talk about the real shit, not the magical cures for anything. So as again, questions, feedback, comments, send them in info@movewithbilly.com. I would love it if you could share this with anyone who you think it'd be helpful. Share this with people who you think it would help. Rate, review, subscribe, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.